Chair Lidke.
Here.
Vice Chair Erickson.
Here.
Commissioner Tippett is excused. Commissioner Snow.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Benson.
Here.
Commissioner Kasparian is excused.
All right, thank you. Has everybody had a chance to review the minutes of August 9th?
Yes.
I reviewed them. I didn't see any
Good.
changes.
Good. Yeah, that was good.
Very good, as always.
Rouge.
We just do a voice vote. Does anybody, does someone want to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I make a motion that we approve the minutes from 8/9/23.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it's unanimous. Minutes are approved. We have a pretty light schedule tonight. We have a city-initiated request to amend sections, a lot of sections in the zone of the code, to reflect changes from the state law regarding development agreements. And Vendelin will present for the city. We'll turn the time over to him.
Thank you. So as you have seen in the staff report, the legislature threw us a curveball a little bit in this session by changing the framework around development agreements. And the repercussions that has for us is that the cities have been preempted in some ways with regard to development agreements. So in our code, we have actually several zones that have development agreements. The reason for that is that development agreements make it a lot easier for the city to tie things down very specifically. However, the legislature decided to get a lot more precise on that whole process. And what has come out of that is what you see on the screen, that a municipality cannot require a development agreement if the land use regulations, you can translate that as the specific zone, if that already establishes all the standards that a development is judged by. And so that really in the end means that in several sections of the code, actually in five zones, we need to just basically strike development agreements because we can't use them anymore in the way we have been accustomed to using them. There are two sections in the code where that's not the case, and that is because in these sections, development agreements are used as a tool to tie a development to an existing master development agreement. So from a legal perspective, it's just a different situation. And in those sections, which are the ones in attachment B and D, so in the Bingham Junction zone and the Jordan Bluff zone, everything goes back to a previous agreement. And in that case, that's still allowed. It's not the case where our zoning ordinance already establishes all the criteria. So that's really the difference there. And yeah, this is basically, you could say, a housekeeping item. It's something that the city is required to do in order to be in line with the state code. Do you have any questions for me on this?
Why did we do development agreements in the first place?
That's
if our code tells them what they can build there, and then we do a development agreement,
That's a good question.
They have to abide by the code.
Yeah. So different cities do this differently. Sometimes it's a matter of maybe what the city is accustomed to. And Aaron may have additional insight. One advantage in a development agreement from what I see is that you can get very specific. And then at that point, you don't have any surprises. The developer can't come back and say, we thought this would work this way, but our engineer says we can't do it this way. We'll give you fewer parking spots. With development agreements, it's really tied down. The agreement says you will give us 106 spots. And it's also a situation where it's an agreement, so the developer, voluntarily signed that document. With a code, a zoning ordinance, things are, there's standardized language. There's oftentimes a little more wiggle room. So. But I'm sure Aaron has more to say about that.
I can chime in a little bit, Mr. Chair. In my understanding, one of the reasons that Midvale in the past has required development agreements is while the zone itself may allow many uses within that zone, the development agreement itself would tie a particular use to a particular parcel, a use that the city may have wanted to see there, like a mixed-use type of project. I can see both ways. I can see advantages to why the state is requiring this, but I can also see why the city was wanting to use development agreements. If there was a project that came before you that you really liked and thought this is great for this particular piece, the development agreement ensured that for about, I believe in the code it was up to 15 years before it expired if it was not built. Now, in the zone district itself, there may be many uses that could be allowed on a particular piece. A project may come before you and the council, you both may approve it, and then nothing happens, and in 2 or 3 years it gets sold, and then a completely different use could come in other than what you approved that's still within the purview of that zone. The development agreement just tried to tie that down a little bit, whereas now, if the use is proposed and it meets all of the standards within that zone, then it will be approved. That said, if there are uses in some of the zones that you or the council feel are not, pertinent to that zone any longer, then that's something we can look at and adjust the use table and go from there. But that's my understanding of why development agreements were used in the past.
So it sounds like one of the things that may come in the future is we may have to tighten up our zoning ordinances to tighten that up and maybe have different zones and create different zones.
Or just move some uses
Or,
around.
yeah.
Like if there's a use that may be allowed right now in a commercial zone, but you feel is more inclined to an industrial zone, strike it from the commercial zone and keep it in the industrial.
Okay.
We had over on 7200, that one where they wanted to make one bedroom.
Yeah.
The park in?
Yeah, the city council had a development agreement to kind of make that work, and it benefited us there.
Yeah.
So what's the negative and positive, do you think, Kendall? And what do you...
In this case, so really this is just a case that we need to comply with the state law. When I said earlier that different cities are accustomed to different ways of doing things, we all have similar tools as cities, but they get used differently. Just like a craftsman, comes up with their own ways of doing things. So from my vantage point, what I see is that in Midvale has been accustomed to having relatively broad zones. If you look at the uses in some of our zones, they really span, the whole spectrum sometimes. And with the development agreement, you basically had, in some ways, a workaround to really tie a specific use to a specific piece of land. And this is a bit of a tangent, though, but maybe this helps you with the background a little bit. If you have an applicant come in for a zone change, then Midvale has been accustomed to saying, yeah, we might be interested in changing the zone for you, but only if you give us a very precise idea of what you're going to build on that piece of land. And then we make an agreement so that we know that once you go through the entire process, that we will actually get that particular project that you told us you would give us at the time of zone change. But that is a different type of application of this principle of development agreements. So that's really not covered by this, but city attorney may elaborate a little bit on that, because with the changes in the state law, that use of development agreements has also been impacted.
So is this going to change how we look at the master plan going forward? Because I know that that's kind of something that we'll be looking at coming up. Our master plan's getting dated. Yeah.
No, in this case, that wouldn't really
Okay.
impact that very much. So, I mean, it's more of a, it's just the way we go about ensuring that we get what we would like to get. We may have to adjust our mechanisms a little bit. Like we said, maybe we need to start looking at, do we actually want to have all these different uses in the zones that we currently see?
So it sounds like immediately the benefits are really for the owners, the developers, because they can buy, sell, and they're not bound to anything. It's whatever the zone is. And the detrimental is that it's going to be some work for the city to bring their zone and code up to maybe, a tighter standard.
Yeah.
But yet the thing I like about that is that it seems like it may provide a little more transparency for a developer to know what he can do instead of, instead of, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, you have to realize if you have an allowed use in a zone, it is allowed. So in that sense, the development agreement, as a tool, can't disallow a use. If a developer comes in and says, well, I want to build an industrial building and the particular zone allows industrial buildings, we have to say yes to it anyway.
Yeah.
But I mean, this spectrum of uses that we see, I mean, I'm sure it has historical reasons. Sometimes there may have been a reason to accommodate a certain use because it was a big employer or so at a certain point in time. So there could be all sorts of historical reasons for that.
Okay. All right. Anything, Aaron, you want to add?
So the legal department has reviewed these proposed changes, and we're in support of them in terms of the way they've been written, and two, agree that they're necessary in order for us to come into compliance with state code.
Yeah.
Having said that, this is a legislative, technically, this is a legislative decision for you, and so you'd be forwarding either a positive or a negative recommendation based on your discretion.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I assume you're the applicant also, so we won't hear from the applicant because we've already heard. Do we have a motion to, oh, I opened the public hearing, so let's open the public comments to anybody who'd like to say anything.
Were there any comments, Gwendolyn?
No,
Okay.
0 comments.
Any emails?
No.
I move that we close the public meeting.
Okay, a motion to close public hearing.
A second?
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, unanimous, so we'll close the public hearing portion of this. Does anybody have any more questions for legal or staff? Anything else?
I'll move to make a motion. I move that we recommend approval of the city-initiated request to amend the Midvale Municipal Code provided in Exhibit A with the findings noted in the staff report.
I second it.
Roll call vote?
Chair Lidke,
Yes.
Vice Chair Erickson,
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson,
Yes?
Commissioner Snow,
Yes.
Commissioner Benson.
Yes.
The motion passes.
All right, thank you.
Welcome to Midvale, Madeline.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome to Midvale.
Yeah,
Work with staff.
that's right, yeah, yeah. All right, any,
Oh, upcoming?
Staff
Gwendolyn,
update.
any, are we having a meeting in 2 weeks?
No, we don't.
Okay, at this point.
At this point, and also at any point in the future, in the next 2 weeks.
We won't meet. Okay,
So we don't have any private development that's ready, and also no code amendments that are ready at this. And we know that for sure because we would need to send out the notice.
okay. All right.
But I wanted to say I hope that all of you liked the planning commission dinner. It's too bad that Candy isn't here, but when she is here next time, I think we'll all thank her for letting us use her yard again. That has sure all worked out well, I think.
Yeah, I thought it was nice to get together, and we appreciate the mayor for showing up and being there with us.
Otherwise, there is a station area plan open house, so if you haven't stopped in yet, please feel free to stop in. This one is for the Fort Union and Center Street station areas, and the Bingham Junction station area plan is also still underway, but all of these plans are sort of starting to wind down. We're going to get the final drafts pretty soon, and the process from then on out is that the city council needs to approve these plans, and then they enter a certification process with Wasatch Front Regional Council. And on the steering committee for these plans, there's a representative from Wasatch Front Regional Council. So I think once the city council has approved them, the expectation is that the certification would also be a relatively smooth process.
Okay.
And there's also still the Main Street study going on, but that's also entering the sort of the final phase.
When's, just a question on that, when's those condos planned to be completed on Main Street? I know they're rising up.
Yeah, so the building across the street from us, is under construction. I mean, that's I'm sure won't be done till sometime next year.
Okay.
The building just a couple of blocks south, where the basketball court is, they're starting,
Oh.
or they're in the process of starting. There's already a construction fence,
Oh,
but they aren't quite there yet, but it's
Okay.
pretty imminent. On the other projects, the project that's south of the senior center, we haven't heard when they're actually going to break ground. And the corner property that used to be a restaurant and originally a bank.
bank.
I mean, that is underway. It seems they are doing sort of diligent work. It's just taking a while because it's a pretty complex building to rehab.
Yeah, it sounds
Maybe
like,
they had to fill in the basement.
yeah.
For example,
Restaurant/.
they're working
Yeah.
on the brick and
Trying
so
to
forth.
do a restore, rehab, and everything else, yeah. Great. Anything from our attorney?
Nope.
Anything else? All right.
I move that we adjourn